This is the Rural Sports Wraparound on the Minnesota State Moorhead Breathing Fire Podcasting Network.
Okay, this is episode 2A, 2B of the Rural Sports Wrap, where we talk all of the best of small town sports. You may notice something different today. I have a guest, the one, the only, the Jacob Anderson.
Hello, good to see you, Nate.
How are we doing today? How goes the day?
We're doing pretty good. It's a big day for Section 8A football in Minnesota. Wednesday, as we're recording today, is the last day of regular season football.
Right.
Because instead of doing Friday night lights in the middle of October, we do Wednesday night lights because in Minnesota, we have the MEA weekend that is on Thursday and Friday, and that usually takes place during the last week of regular season football. So there's a lot of football being played around the state of Minnesota tonight.
Right now as we speak. I'm glad you brought that up because we've actually got a little bit of, we've got football going on right now. We're recording this at the KFGO studios, the lovely, mighty KFGO studios. And we've got some football going on now, a little Barnesville. But that is part of why I brought you in today to talk, is because I've covered North Dakota high school sports here for 3.5 years now, we'll say. And I, every time we talk about, when my duties here at KFGO at the radio station call for me to know about Minnesota sports, I am lost. I know absolutely nothing. And, I know Barnesville and that's about it because we cover a lot of Barnesville stuff here. But, so I'm glad I brought you in today. You are a native of Bagley, Minnesota, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me about Bagley. What kind of school you got in Bagley?
Yeah, so Bagley's been in kind of an interesting situation for the last 5 years. For many years, Bagley was a AA school. And since COVID, enrollment dropped, and that led us down to a single A. We were Section 8 AA, and then we went down to Section 8A in 2021. And since then, there's been a lot of rebuilding because that class of 21 group of athletes, there was a lot of them. They were very talented, and they all graduated in 2021. So then once the fall wrap comes around in 2021, we're down to Section A, and this is right out of COVID, and we don't have as many kids anymore in sports. And the thing was, the year before, in 2020, because of COVID, our school had a lot of cases, and there was a lot of restrictions in place. So we barely had a football season. We barely had a volleyball season. And we had a little bit of a basketball season. And then, since then, our athletes didn't get the conditioning they probably would have regularly had. So then, we kind of had a few down years in Bagley, but it seems they're starting to pick it up now. They know where their alignment is in the conference.
You mentioned, and while you were talking, I was kind of taking note of the things you were saying. You were saying Section 8 or Section 2A and Single A and those. I have absolutely no idea what any of that means.
So in North Dakota, do you guys have Section A and B?
Right? Yes,
or
for some sports, because recently, I think it was 2 years ago now, we tried 3-class basketball for the first time.
Sure.
And that was a total mess the first year. But they kind of rolled with it, and it worked. I think it worked okay because now we have 3-class volleyball. So boys basketball, girls basketball, and volleyball have 3 classes. And then football, as it's had for a while, has 4 classes. They have 9-man, single A, double A, and triple A. But as I understand it, is it uniform across the board in Minnesota, or is it different on sports and different on sections and whatever? How does that all work?
As far as I know, for the bigger sports like basketball and football, and volleyball, there's 6 sections. There's Section A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A, 6A, and that's all depending on the size of how big the school is, of course, and there are a lot more schools in Minnesota than there are in North Dakota, so then there are a lot bigger schools too, so that also plays a factor. And then there are about 10 sections in each school, I believe, and those consist of 8 to 10 teams depending on the sport. Say, for Section 8A, there are 8 teams in Section 8A, and that just all depends on conference realignment, where the schools are in the state. And the reason there's only there's East and West in volleyball and football, because there's a lot more schools that are in volleyball and football, or volleyball and basketball, than there are in football. Football, there's only one Section 8A. There is no East and West.
Okay.
And that just all depends on how many schools have the program as well.
Right. And when schools in football, because we see this in North Dakota too, but like when schools in football, if they don't have the team or like the numbers to field the program, did they co-op with other schools then? Is that kind of how
Correct.
that works? So then kids would just have to, I don't know, take the bus to Bagley if they want to play football?
Right. Luckily, Bagley is only one school for football.
Right.
But in Section 8A, Mahnomen and Waban are a school together.
Sure.
Red Lake County is just all the schools in Red Lake County, so like Oakley and Mentor and all those schools.
That's how we have some schools like that too. Like we have Hankinson, Campbell, Fairmount, Tinta, Rosshold.
Right.
Is all like one. Ledgerwood is all one big co-op, which we always kind of laugh about.
Some schools that stand out to me the most are, or I guess some teams in football that stand out the most are Polk County West and Ada Borup West. Polk County West consists of all the schools in the western portion of Polk County. So there's a school in Polk County called Sacred Heart, and then there's also Climax Fisher. They combine for football. And for Ada Borup West, recently they just took all the teams that were from Norman County West and Halstead, because that school is shut down in like 2017, 2018, I believe. So when you have those teams that end in West, that you just know that there's going to be a bunch of towns in that sport. Right.
And that, you'd mentioned Norman County, I believe. Is that where our good buddy Dallas Carell comes from?
That's where our good buddy Dallas Carell comes from.
Our good buddy Dallas Carell comes from. Shout out to him. He was the last one, right?
That's right.
I believe
he was a freshman the last year that Norman County West was a school. So in his last few years in high school, he had to go over to Ada.
The end of an era. The end of a career for him. So that kind of brings me into my next question, because I think you guys do this differently on the other side of the Red River, but when we get to playoff time, the end of the year, we always just do, well, I guess I shouldn't say that, because now that we have 3-class basketball, it's changed a little bit. We have introduced a district tournament, but we've usually, the way that it is for most sports is that you just go straight into a region tournament where you field all the teams from the region minus, you maybe cut off the bottom one or two. I think they play a play-in, but anyway, you go to the region tournament. And then basically it was just, for the longest time, it was the winner of the region tournament gets in the state tournament. There were 8 regions across the state, and that was it. That was how you settled it, in B specifically. How do you do that tournament business over there?
So from my experience, when I was in basketball, we were at the bottom of the bottom in terms of standings. So we played in what was the play-in tournament.
Right.
Where it's the bottom 4 teams in the section would play against each other. And whoever won went to play the first and second seed. Okay. And so that led to the first round, which was, the first round was just home court advantage. You just play at that team's school for the first game.
Sure.
And then who all wins in the first round, they all go to a neutral site on a Saturday to play. And Section 8A, I know.
Is that usually a school within the section?
That's usually in the school within the section.
Yep.
Correct.
And then does it just rotate on the host?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Yep. Yeah. And then the neutral site that we usually go to is the Ralph Engelstad Arena in Thief River Falls. And for Section 8AA, when Bagley was in that many years ago, their neutral site location would be the Concordia Fieldhouse.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
And then, so once you get past sections, is that into state then?
Let's see. There are a few rounds in the section tournament, and then there is a section final.
Yep.
And then whoever wins the section final is named section champions, and then they go to state.
Sure, I understand. I always find it funny because you brought up playing at the Ralph as a neutral site, and we've talked in the past about the Fargo Dome being used as a neutral site. Don't you find it kind of funny that we play some of those important games over on the North Dakota side?
It is pretty funny, but I understand why we do it. It's
And why is
because
that?
because good one. Because towards the end of the football season, Minnesota weather, it gets pretty cold,
Mhm.
and it just is more kind of a reward to play in a nice venue like the Fargo Dome. Because I couldn't imagine, the first weekend of November on a Saturday, nice and cold, probably a frost advisory in effect, playing at Chet Anderson Stadium, Bemidji,
Uh-huh.
for that, just to kick that off right next to the Lake Bemidji. I couldn't imagine playing there on a windy day.
Right.
And plus, it also depends on, the scheduling of when Bemidji State plays there too, I suppose. And I suppose it's always them first when it comes to scheduling. So,
Yeah. Well, I do find that interesting because, like, the thought process to go to a neutral site for the section final, I find kind of interesting because, like, we have in North Dakota, usually outside of the 3-class sports and before the 3-class sports were a thing, we would always play your region championship would always be played at just whoever hosted, which, like, created some, like, pretty hostile environments because, I mean, it could be it could be two rivals that are playing, and you've got Central Cass and Kindred, who are only 25-minute drive apart, and they pack that gym full. So I do find it interesting that they go to that neutral site. But I also kind of see what you're saying. I wonder. I guess I don't know. We'd maybe have to find an expert to ask why those aren't played at the schools instead, and they're just played at a neutral site. But
I'm sure it's just for a safety matter too.
would be my guess.
Because, I mean, there are plenty of schools in the northwest Minnesota area that still don't have either football turf, or maybe in hindsight their complex isn't up to regulation either, because there could be that one school whose bleachers are probably so close to the sidelines that if you get a pack of toxic parents, you don't want to call out their coach for something like that either. So I guess in a site like the Fargo Dome, you're a lot more spaced out. So
well, and I wonder too if that kind of, like, you think about, like, the way that Minnesota is structured out, and I mean so much of like the infrastructure is all in the Minneapolis area.
Right.
Where, like, around here we have, like, we rotate on sites for our state tournaments because that's where we always go to the big sites, so we rotate on the Fargo Dome, the Bismarck Events Center, and the Minot State Dome up in Minot, and, like, you kind of cover a bunch of ground.
And that's all for, like, volleyball and basketball, or is it like that for
volleyball,
football too?
basketball? Yep. Dakota Bowl is the football final is always hosted at the Dome because there's not really anywhere else. I believe one time we were wondering though, like, I wonder why they don't try and get that game at the Alaris Center. I assume there must be some kind of scheduling conflict. You would think.
Yeah. I don't know.
But the Dome has been the host to it, which is fine. I think that the Fargo Dome is a cool place to play. I'm sure the kids enjoy it. I'm sure they're not complaining about getting to use the Fargo Dome. I'm sure the kids who play in the section finals for Minnesota don't complain about getting to play a game, and it's not even a state championship game or anything.
Yeah. The thing about the Fargo Dome is that way back in the day, Bagley used to play their last elementary game in the Fargo Dome with 3 other schools.
Yeah.
Like, you divide it up into, like, the size of an elementary football field. They all play on that. And then my older brother was one of the last 5th graders to ever play at the Fargo Dome.
Oh, yeah?
So...
Well, I know in North Dakota they do that. They bring elementary kids in and they let them play at the Fargo Dome. I remember some kids. I didn't play football growing up, but I remember there were some kids that I went to high school with in my grade that got to play a game at the Fargo Dome, which I just think is so funny. I feel like they use that space a lot, and they definitely, like, I don't know, they make good use out of it because, like, I remember a couple years ago I played, like, a disc golf tournament there. And we were, like, I don't know, throwing discs in at the bleachers, and we were, like, I don't know, down the hallways and stuff, probably hitting things we weren't supposed to, but I don't know. It's kind of interesting to me that they use the Dome. The next thing I was going to talk about is that I think it's kind of cool that that one of the big benefits is that when you do get down to your championships and your finals, you guys do have the ability to use things like U.S. Bank Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Which is really cool because if you think the Fargo Dome is cool, I'm sure that playing at U.S. Bank is a lot more fun than that. I guess, I don't know. Did you ever see Bagley play at, the Fargo Dome, Target Field, any of those kind of U of Minnesota? Never got there?
Never got there. Nope. No. The farthest we ever got was, I was in 6th grade, I believe, when we were still in Section 8 AA. The first game, we hosted Crookston, I believe, and we beat them fair and square. And then the second game, we went to Barnesville. And if we won that game, we would have gone to the Fargo Dome.
Sure.
But we did not win that game, and that's the closest Bagley has gone to the Fargo Dome since in terms of football. Basketball, this is an interesting one. This was 2012, and they were playing in John Glass Fieldhouse in Bemidji, and they were playing against Perham, one of the best teams in the state of Minnesota that year. They went into triple overtime at the John Glass Fieldhouse, and I think there were a few controversial missed calls. I don't really remember the whole thing. I was in first grade when this happened. I just remember being in the bleachers. But if they had won that game, I believe they would have gone to play at Williams Arena down at the U of M.
Oh, sure.
And that's the farthest Bagley basketball has been to that much success since then. Otherwise, it's kind of been just an average team since then.
Do you feel, coming from a school that's kind of struggled to kind of advance far in those playoffs, do you feel like there's need for reform in the way that Minnesota kind of structures their conferences and things?
That's interesting because the conference realignment seems to be changing almost every year.
Mm-hmm.
Just some notable conference realignments in football in this decade that I've known is, of course, 2021, Bagley goes from 8AA to 8A, and then 2023, Foston, Bagley's rival, went from Section 8A in football to 9-man. And just this year, Park Christian went from 9-man to Section 8A. Mm-hmm. So they kind of took Foston's spot.
Sure.
And I guess for football, the conference realignment seems to be changing almost every year.
Yeah.
So, and the teams around them just seem to be getting better and better. Kind of the most overpowering part of Section 8A is Monoman Waban, because Monoman used to always be a powerhouse football school, and so did Waban.
Sure.
So when they combined in 2018, it was almost like, we know they're going to go to state every year.
Right.
So you're going to have to, every team in that section is going to have to do their best to try to beat them.
Yeah, and, well, the people of Barnesville are very good to the mighty 790, so I almost feel like maybe I can't even say this. But, I mean, I see that, every year, it seems like Barnesville is playing at U.S. Bank, or they're playing at the Fargo Dome. And that was kind of how we felt in North Dakota, I feel like, a little bit, when that's kind of why we ended up with 3 classes in basketball. And I think we'll kind of continue to get that through in more sports as it goes on, because it's just, I think it's more fun for parity, and it's more fun, when one team runs away with the whole deal in the division, it just really takes away from what makes high school sports, really special. And I think that the realignment and stuff is always kind of fun to watch, kind of fun to see. But you had talked about Foston moving out of Bagley's division. I do want to ask about that, because I mean, how do you feel about that? Does that feel weird that you don't play? Because I went to Northern Cass, and our big rivals were always Central Cass and Kindred. And we did not like playing them, and that was it was rivalry, right? And every time that we played those were the games you circled at the beginning of the year. Those were the teams you always wanted to beat. Is that weird that and I assume you probably still play Foston and other things, but to not play them in football, is that strange?
Yeah, it was pretty strange, because in football, Foston was our biggest rivalry. We had the Battle of Highway 2 trophy.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a little mini bowl game that we have with Foston just about every year. And the last few years, we took the trophy home because Foston was kind of in the same situation as us in terms of football. Their program kind of went into rebuilding mode for many years, but we always seemed to go on top when we play them. So that was always a fun game to play. But now that they went to 9-man, they honestly seem to fit in 9-man. Yeah. Because the other problem about Bagley, too, is our traveling schedule can be a little wonky at times, because the schools around us, like Clearbrook-Gonvick and Winnimac and Fertile Beltrami, are all also 9-man.
Sure.
And those are the closest schools to Bagley that they would play.
So how far does Bagley usually have to travel for games?
Minimum about an hour.
Really?
Yep. And then tonight, as we're recording, they're at Park Christian over in Moorhead, which is a 2-hour drive down and back.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy, because I think in Region 1, I think the farthest any team really has to travel is an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I think the farthest that I ever traveled for a game, we played a baseball game in Oaks once, and that's maybe 2.5 hours, if even. So that's kind of, is it like that in all the sports for the most part?
For a little bit, it was like that in basketball because, like I said, when we went to 8A in 2021, our schedule for basketball was kind of already officially made the year before when we were still 8AA.
Sure.
So our schedule was just so out of whack there. We played Thief River Falls twice, which is about an hour away. And then there was a time where we didn't play Clearbrook Gonvick, which was about 10 minutes away from Bagley. That was just a scheduling thing from the higher-ups for some reason.
Yeah.
But so that was taken away for a little bit. And otherwise, we've still played, Park Christian in basketball because they're in our conference, the Pine to Prairie Conference, which is in the name, the Pine to the Prairie. So, Bagley is more in the Pines.
Sure.
Boston is kind of in the Pines, but a little bit in the Prairie. But then there's all the Prairie, which is fertile, and Mahnomen and Ada and Park Christian School and Moorhead and all that.
No, it's a lot cooler than calling it Region 1, Region 2, Region 3.
Yep.
It's all we got around here. But how's Bagley doing this year? Do you pay much attention to that now that you've graduated? Do you care at all? I mean,
for a couple of years, I wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah.
But this year they've kind of found their rhythm.
Yeah.
They're on one of their best starts since that playoff run back in 2016.
And you're talking football here?
For football.
For football, sure.
They've been on one of their best runs since that playoff run in 2016 they went on when they were 8AA.
Yep.
But they're 5-2, and they play Park Christian tonight, like I've said before. They're also 5-2, so it's that battle for the third seed in Section 8A.
Yep.
Last year was their first time they hosted a playoff game.
Ever? Oh,
since 2016.
Since 2016, I was like,
so
no,
that was really crazy.
Yeah.
But I've been paying attention here or there. Basketball, they're also building up too.
Yeah.
I think last year, now that they're playing single A teams, I feel like they just have been playing teams at their pace, so they've been winning games. Like, for example, my junior year, when we went to Section 8A for the first time, we still played a lot of AA schools, and because of that, we did not have a great record. We went 0-26. But
0-26.
We went 0-26. We almost got 100 bombed a few times. But
100 is crazy.
But I feel like after a few years of being in that section, just getting familiar with all the teams, they've started to win games again, and they've got a program going there too. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I played basketball up until I was a freshman in high school, and we went and we played this tournament in Perham, and we got matched up against this team from Alexandria, and they were really, really good. And I think we lost 110 to 20.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not even kidding. It was really bad. It was not fun, but
I played basketball up until my junior year when we went 0-26. I felt like after that year,
I'm just gave up after 0-26. You're like, I'm not doing this anymore.
I'm like,
I'm over it.
I had a few classmates that year too, and I got along with them great. A lot of them were my close friends, and after that year, they're like, I think I'm gonna quit, and I'm like, really? I might stick it out one more year, and then I played summer league with that team that year, and it just wasn't the same without most of my friends. And I was kind of the unk of that era, really, because I've been used to playing with people that were older than me for many years, from 6th to 11th grade. I've always played with people older than me, so I've always been adapted to their culture, to their just style of play. So then when I went down to the classes or two below me, they just had a different scheme, and we just didn't collide. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to not call it for my senior year.
Yeah, fair enough. What were the this is kind of just a for fun question, but what were the vibes in the locker room in that one, when you lose your 24th game? Because I played on a baseball team when I was a freshman, and we won one game, and it was the region tournament play-in game to get to the tournament. And the year before that, when I was in 8th grade, that team didn't win a game. So we won one game in 2 years. And I remember that the vibes on that team were not great. We were just, kids didn't take it seriously. And then, that kind of made the coaches mad. And then, then the kids were mad because they didn't see the point in it. I mean, did you kind of experience something similar to that, or what was it like?
this was also an interesting thing too, because we had a coaching change that year. From 2012 to 2021, we had a coach that came in, and he was pretty consistent throughout his tenure at Bagley, but it was the same result every year. You know, maybe they were maybe 10 and 15 every year, and they just lost in the first round. And then eventually that got noticed with, you know, the players and the parents. Though they're like pretty powerful figures in Bagley, the players and the parents.
Well, of course they are. That's small town sports.
Yep, that's small town sports in general. Yeah. So then eventually
somebody's got a dad on the school board, and then it all snowballs.
So from there. So then eventually you know, we just decided to move on from that coach. Yeah. And our athletic director also retired that year. So it was kind of a bunch of new faces that year as well. However, they weren't new faces, they were returning faces. The coach they had for basketball that year was the coach that had many successful years in Bagley prior to this coach. He was the coach that played against Perm in triple overtime in 2012. That was his last game before coming back. And we just had a bunch of players that didn't have much varsity experience. Mm-hmm. And our very first game was also interesting too, because we played Black Duck, and one of the star players on Black Duck that year went to Bagley. Up until that year, he transferred back to Black Duck after being in Bagley since fourth grade.
Nice.
And he's a great athlete too. So then that was also kind of the build up to that very first game. Was we were hosting Black Duck. It was the return of my good buddy Dante Frank.
Shout out Dante Frank.
And you know, in practice those first couple weeks, we seemed to be going good. We had a good summer league that year, and we were like, okay, we're ready to face Black Duck.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, the next day we're playing Black Duck, and they go on a 42 run. It's 40-2.
Oh, no.
Everybody's panicking.
Oh, no.
Our players are panicking. Our coaches are panicking. And the fans in the stands are panicking. So yeah. I feel like if we had an easier game, game one, it would have been a much different season.
Yeah.
Because
you feel like things just snowballed from there?
Things just snowballed from there.
Yeah.
And we had 3 seniors on that team.
Okay.
And that was their first time ever leading a team.
Sure.
So, and they were all captains, and, you know, they just didn't have that experience right away either. So it was kind of hard to lead a team while you're losing every game.
Yep. I feel like we kind of see that sometimes where, like, you see, like, one team gets a really good, solid group of players, you know, say they have 5, 6 seniors and a bunch of juniors. Then all of a sudden, those 2 years go by, and that team that was once pretty good, well, now you've got all these freshmen and these sophomores that never had a chance. Well, now they're the juniors and the seniors, and they never really played, and now you're kind of stuck with, you know, they have no idea. You know, they don't understand the speed of it, and they don't understand, you know, what's going on at the varsity level. It just gets a little different on them.
Yeah, because when I was in 10th grade, the year before being on varsity my junior year,
yeah,
I was playing JV. I didn't suit for varsity or anything. I was playing JV during COVID, and I didn't play many games that year either because I had a sprained ankle on top of not having as much games during the COVID year. Sure. And then the first game back after my sprained ankle, I had a concussion. So I was pretty injury prone that year. So I went from basically playing on the C team in 9th grade to playing maybe 5 or 6 games at JV. Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, 11th grade, I'm the starting center for varsity. My 6'1" self is starting at center for Minnesota basketball.
Oh man, that isn't that ideal.
No.
Did you have like it's this high school sports we're talking about, but did you have like a welcome to the league moment where you were playing varsity all of a sudden and you were just like, oh my God?
That was that first game.
That
was my welcome to varsity.
I suppose you kind of the 40-2 run.
That was
the 40-2 run.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a wild one. But the other thing was the scheduling that year as well. Shortly after that first week of games, we had games on a Thursday, Friday, and then next thing you know, we had games on a Monday and Tuesday. So it was basically 4 games in a row. I think Bagley played the most games in December out of any team in Section A in Minnesota.
Sure.
because of the way the schedule worked.
I see.
And that's the other thing too. It was just the way we scheduled for many years was a little wild too.
Yeah.
It kind of led to our player performance.
Right.
Like we played Park Rapids in that 4-game stretch as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they're a bigger school. And they had a guy on the team who was about 6'8", 6'9", and I had to guard him the whole game. But
Fun.
luckily I knew that if he had a hand in his face, he wouldn't do much.
Oh, really?
So there was that factor for me. Like I just knew to keep my arms up straight and not like bend over so I get into foul trouble or anything.
Yeah.
Even though I got into foul trouble just about every game for doing that. But it was pretty nice to be able to defend that guy.
Yeah.
He did have a few slam dunks in the game, but I was on the bench when that happened.
Wouldn't have happened on your watch.
Well, I'm not saying about that.
Wouldn't have happened on Jacob Anderson your watch. That's for sure.
No.
You talked about. I did want to ask about this. You talked about a kid from Bagley that had transferred to Black Duck. Is there any kind of restriction if a kid transfers? Do they have like a embargo period where they can't play varsity sports?
I am not sure about that because the reason why he transferred was because, it was just a parent custody thing. So.
Oh, sure. So did he go live with like different parents?
He lived with his dad afterwards.
Okay.
His dad was in Black Duck, his mom was in Bagley.
Lived in Black Duck, I assume, or he moved over to Black Duck?
He ended up living he ended up moving back to Black Duck with his dad.
I see.
But that's also an interesting question because when I was a 9th grader, we had two dudes in the 2 grades above me, my brother's class. They played in Bagley, and they were pretty good. However, those classes above them had so many people on the floor for varsity as well that they weren't on varsity. So they were not happy about that. They weren't happy with the coach. The coach wasn't really necessarily happy with him. They weren't happy with the athletic director. So they just said, well, we're going to take it personally. We're going to transfer over to Clearbrook-Gonvick.
Yeah.
And the thing is, one of the guys, their mom already lived in Clearbrook.
Oh, okay.
So there wasn't really much controversy there. But the other guy lived in Bagley, at least in Bagley grounds, with his family. Mm-hmm. So in order for him to play sports, he had to be living in Clearbrook.
Right.
So
that's how it is over here too.
He rented like a studio, one of the rare studio bedroom apartments in Clearbrook.
Like on his own?
Like on his own.
Oh, I suppose, was he a senior?
No, he was a junior.
Okay.
But
interesting.
When he sat down in his bed, he could lean out his hands like this, and I'm touching the camera there.
That's okay.
But he could feel the left hand on his wall and the right hand. They were just touching the wall. That's how small this.
He was just in a wingspan apartment.
Yep, he was just doing it for the love of the game.
That's crazy. See, we see that sometimes in North Dakota too. Like some kids who transfer, just kind of out of nowhere. Kids who will go to Fargo, or Fargo kids who will kind of come to those rural schools. But I should clarify, like, the reason I had asked is because there is, like, if you don't live in the school district, there is, like, in North Dakota, they give you, like, it's like a 1-year embargo. You can't play on the varsity roster.
Okay.
But yeah, it's kind of strange. I just wanted to ask you about that. Kind of interesting for sure. But yeah, that's kind of all I really, I think we really talk. I don't know. We had a good conversation, I think, today about the differences, and it was kind of good for me to learn a little bit just to kind of help myself, because as much as I know about the North Dakota side, like I said, I know absolutely nothing about Minnesota when I cross over onto that side. So I appreciate the conversation. You got anything else? What's your favorite thing about Minnesota high school sports?
Favorite thing about Minnesota high school sports? I really don't know.
He doesn't have one. He hates Minnesota high school sports.
It's not that. It's just I haven't been in the game in so long.
He hasn't been in the game. That's fair. Well, that's kind of where I find myself too sometimes, because I'm like, if I didn't have my job, for the paper, I definitely would not care. At all about any of this. But
right.
Yeah, it's just how she goes. So. All right. Well, I think that concludes. I think we've kind of talked about everything we can. So Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no
A
problem.
reminder, you are listening to the Rural Sports Wraparound on the Breathing Fire Minnesota State Moorhead Podcast Network.
You've been listening to the Rural Sports Wraparound on the Minnesota State Moorhead Breathing Fire Podcasting Network, bringing you the most up-to-date predictions, highlights, and interviews that cover all things North Dakota prep sports.